On December 4, 2024, a single missile system changed the balance of power in the South Caucasus, and Moscow is absolutely furious. India just armed Armenia with a weapon that can obliterate targets 300 kilometers away in under 3 minutes. The Brahmos cruise missile. Azerbaijan's ally Turkey is watching nervously. Russia feels betrayed. And the entire region is one spark away from another war. If you've been following the tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan, what you're about to hear will completely reframe everything you thought you knew. But before we get to the nightmare scenario unfolding right now, you need to understand what happened in 2020. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. I subscribe. And I'll personally welcome you into the family. With that said, let's get started. For 44 days, Armenia and Azerbaijan fought a brutal war over Nagorno-Karabakh, a mountainous region both countries claim. Armenia lost. Badly. Over 4,000 soldiers killed. 1/3 of their territory gone. And the reason? Turkish-made drones absolutely shredded their defenses. Meet Armin, a 34-year-old Armenian soldier who survived that war. He told journalists later, "I watched our Soviet-era air defense systems get torn apart like paper. We had nothing to fight back with. Our equipment was from the 1980s. Their drones were from 2020. It wasn't even close." Azerbaijan's Bayraktar TB2 drones dominated the battlefield. They circled overhead, invisible to radar, picking off Armenian tanks, artillery, and soldiers one by one. Armenia's military was exposed as outdated, outgunned, and abandoned. Because here's the twist nobody expected. Russia, Armenia's supposed ally, the country that promised to protect them through a mutual defense treaty, sat on the sidelines and watched. The betrayal was complete. Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan publicly stated in 2022, "When we needed Russia most, they were nowhere to be found. Our soldiers died while Russian peacekeepers stood by." The 2020 war wasn't just a military defeat. It was a psychological shattering. Armenian mothers buried sons who were killed by drones they never saw coming. Entire villages were abandoned overnight. And the international community? They issued statements of concern and did absolutely nothing. That humiliation, that feeling of being defenseless while the world watched, is what drove Armenia to make the decision that would shock the world and infuriate the Kremlin. That's when Armenia started shopping for weapons. Not from Russia. From anyone who would sell them the firepower to ensure 2020 never happened again. Enter the Brahmos. This isn't just a missile. It's the fastest cruise missile on planet Earth, and now it's pointed directly at Azerbaijan. Here are the numbers that should terrify Azerbaijan's military planners. Mach 2.8 speed. That's 3,450 kilometers per hour. A 300-kilometer range. And it carries a 300-kilogram warhead, enough explosive power to level a command center, an airbase, or a presidential palace. The Brahmos was jointly developed by India and Russia starting in 1998. It's named after the Brahmaputra River in India and the Moskva River in Russia. And it has an operational success rate above 95%. In real combat scenarios, this thing almost never misses. But here's what makes it truly terrifying. It flies so low it hugs the terrain. Mountains, valleys, riverbeds. It uses the landscape to hide from radar. By the time air defense systems detect it, they have maybe 20 seconds to react. And at Mach 2.8, 20 seconds means the missile has already traveled 19 kilometers closer. Let me give you a real-world example. In March 2022, India accidentally fired a Brahmos into Pakistani territory during a routine maintenance check. The missile traveled 124 kilometers in just over 3 minutes before self-destructing. Pakistan's Air Force didn't even detect it until it was already deep inside their airspace. Pakistan's military spokesman later admitted, "Our systems registered an unidentified object, but by the time we processed the data, it was already past our second line of defense." That's how stealthy this weapon is. Now imagine you're an Azerbaijani air defense operator. You're monitoring your radar screen at 2 a.m. Everything looks clear. You're drinking tea, checking your phone. Then suddenly, your entire base is gone. Erased. You never saw it coming. You never had a chance to sound the alarm. That's the reality Azerbaijan is now facing. Because in December 2024, satellite images confirmed what defense analysts had been whispering about for months. Brahmos launchers had arrived in Armenia. Multiple units. Deployed near the border with Azerbaijan. Intelligence reports suggest at least 4 launch systems with 12 missiles total. The Armenian Ministry of Defense hasn't confirmed the exact number. They don't have to. The satellite photos speak for themselves. But here's where things get really complicated, because India just made an enemy it definitely didn't want. Turkey and Azerbaijan don't just have friendly relations. They have a blood pact. They call each other one nation, two states. They speak similar languages. They share cultural and religious ties. And they have a formal military alliance that says, attack one, you fight both. President Erdogan of Turkey has repeatedly said he will defend Azerbaijan to the last drop of blood. That's not diplomatic language. That's a war guarantee. Turkey proved it in 2020 by supplying Azerbaijan with drones, military advisors, and even Syrian mercenaries to fight against Armenia. So now, Armenia, a country of 3 million people, has missiles capable of hitting Baku, Azerbaijan's capital, in 4 minutes. And those missiles were sold by India, a country that just became Azerbaijan and Turkey's problem. Turkey's defense industry immediately responded. Turkish President Erdogan held an emergency security meeting within 48 hours of the Brahmos delivery. Turkish media outlets started running stories about Indian aggression in the Caucasus. The message was clear: Turkey is watching, and Turkey is not happy. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev called an emergency session of the National Security Council. Azerbaijani state media began broadcasting segments on Armenia's escalation and the threat of Indian weapon systems. Then there's Russia. And this is where the geopolitical earthquake gets even messier. The Brahmos uses Russian ramjet engine technology. Russia co-developed this weapon. Russia's NPO Mashinostroyenia contributed the supersonic combustion ramjet engine. Russia expected to control where this weapon went. So India selling it to Armenia without Moscow's explicit approval? That's a direct message. Russia no longer controls its former Soviet allies. Let me give you a stat that shows how bad Russia-Armenia relations have become. Armenia refused to host Russian military drills in 2024. They skipped a meeting of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, Russia's version of NATO. They arrested pro-Russian politicians on corruption charges. And they started buying weapons from France, India, and the United States. Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan even said publicly in September 2023, Russia's security guarantees are not being implemented. We have to look elsewhere for our defense needs. A Russian diplomat stationed in Yerevan, Armenia's capital, spoke anonymously to reporters. We gave them security guarantees for 30 years. We stationed troops here. We sold them weapons at discounted prices. We lost Russian soldiers protecting Armenia in the 1990s. They thanked us by buying missiles from India and France. It's a slap in the face. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated in January 2024, Armenia's pivot toward Western and non-traditional partners undermines regional stability. That's diplomatic code for, we're furious, but there's nothing we can do about it. And here's the surprise fact that changes everything. Before Armenia, India had only sold the Brahmos to one other country, the Philippines, in 2022. That's it. 2 export customers in 25 years. This isn't a missile India casually sells to anyone. It's their crown jewel. Their technological pride. Their proof that India can compete with American, Russian, and Chinese weapons systems. The export version sold to Armenia is slightly downgraded, range reduced from 450 kilometers to 290 kilometers to comply with missile technology control regime restrictions. But make no mistake, 290 kilometers is more than enough to reach every major city in Azerbaijan from Armenian launch sites. So why Armenia? Why risk angering Turkey, complicating relations with Russia, and inserting themselves into a regional conflict 4,000 kilometers away from India? Because if Armenia succeeds, If they use Indian weapons to defend themselves and deter aggression, other Russian allies will notice. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. Countries that have relied on Russia for decades but watched Moscow fail to protect Armenia in 2020. Countries that are now asking, if Russia won't defend Armenia, will they defend us? India just opened a new market. The post-Soviet arms market. A market Russia thought it owned forever. India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh visited Armenia in September 2023, the first ever visit by an Indian defense minister to Armenia. The symbolism was impossible to miss. India was officially entering the South Caucasus as a military power. If you think this is just a regional dispute over mountains and borders, think again. This could completely reshape the global arms trade and break Russia's monopoly on weapons sales in the post-Soviet space. But there's a hidden danger no one's telling you about, and it could drag the entire region into a war that makes 2020 look like a skirmish. Armenia now has first strike capability. One Brahmos launch could hit Baku, Azerbaijan's capital city, in 4 minutes flat. No warning. No time to evacuate government officials. No time to scramble fighter jets. Just impact. Let's talk about what Azerbaijan is facing. Their air defenses are built around Russian-made S-300 systems. Designed in the 1970s. Upgraded in the 2000s, sure, but fundamentally outdated technology. The Brahmos was specifically engineered to defeat systems exactly like the S-300. It's a predator built to hunt that exact prey. The S-300 radar operates on specific frequencies. The Brahmos has electronic countermeasures designed to jam those exact frequencies. The S-300 tracks targets assuming they fly at certain altitudes. The Brahmos flies at 15 meters above ground, below the S-300's effective engagement zone. A 2021 study by the Moscow Institute of Thermal Technology, ironically, a Russian institution, concluded that S-300 systems have a 12% probability of intercepting a Brahmos missile in ideal conditions. 12%. In real combat conditions with terrain masking, electronic warfare, and multiple missiles incoming, that number drops to around 3 to 5%. Let me paint you a nightmare scenario, and understand, this isn't science fiction. This is what military analysts are genuinely wargaming right now at think tanks in Washington, Moscow, Ankara, and New Delhi. Picture this. It's 3 a.m. in Baku. The city is asleep. Late shift workers are heading home. Nightclubs are closing. No warning sirens. No alerts. The S-300 radar operators are monitoring their screens. Everything appears normal. Then a Brahmos cruise missile, launched from Armenian territory near Vardenis, slams into the presidential palace in central Baku. The building collapses. Communications go dark. President Aliyev is evacuated to an underground bunker. Emergency services scramble, but half their communication infrastructure just went offline. Azerbaijan retaliates immediately. They launch Turkish-made Bora-2 ballistic missiles at Armenian command centers. They scramble Su-25 attack aircraft toward the Armenian border. They activate their entire air defense network. But Armenia responds by launching 5 more Brahmos missiles, one at Haydar Aliyev International Airport in Baku, shutting down Azerbaijan's primary civilian and military airfield. One at the Sangakal terminal, one of the world's largest oil and gas facilities. One at military headquarters in Ganja, Azerbaijan's second-largest city. One at the Mingachever Dam, which supplies 15% of Azerbaijan's electricity. And one more at the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline control center. Within 6 hours, Azerbaijan's critical infrastructure is in ruins. Oil exports stop. The economy freezes. And that's when Turkey makes good on its promise. President Erdogan appears on television at 9 a.m. Turkish time and invokes Article 2 of the Shusha Declaration, Turkey's formal alliance with Azerbaijan signed in 2021. He announces that Turkey will provide all necessary support, including military assistance, to Azerbaijan. Turkish F-16 scramble from bases in Diyarbakir and Erzurum. Turkish naval vessels in the Black Sea reposition toward the Caucasus. Turkey, a NATO member with the second-largest military in the alliance, is now at war with Armenia. But here's where it spirals out of control. Armenia has a defense agreement with Russia through the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Article 4 of the CSTO Charter requires member states to assist each other in case of external aggression. Russia, despite being angry at Armenia for buying non-Russian weapons, cannot afford to look weak by abandoning yet another ally after the 2020 disaster. If Russia refuses to defend Armenia now, the CSTO becomes meaningless. Every member state, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, will know that Russia's security guarantees are worthless. Russia's entire sphere of influence collapses. So Russian forces mobilize. Not a full-scale invasion of Turkey that would trigger NATO Article 5, but peacekeeping operations along the Armenia-Turkey border. Russian S-400 systems deploy to Armenia. Russian electronic warfare units jam Turkish communications. The situation is now a powder keg. And there's one more player nobody's talking about: Iran. Iran shares a 44-kilometer border with Armenia and a 700-kilometer border with Azerbaijan. Tehran has quietly supported Armenia for decades, partly because Iran's population is 20 to 30% ethnically Azerbaijani, and they don't want a powerful, nationalist, Turkish-aligned Azerbaijan on their border inspiring separatist movements inside Iran. Iranian Azerbaijanis already demand more autonomy. A militarily victorious Azerbaijan could embolden those demands into full-blown separatist violence. Iran cannot allow that. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei stated in 2022, "We will not tolerate geopolitical changes in the region that threaten our national security." That's code for, if Azerbaijan tries to change borders, Iran intervenes. If war breaks out, Iran has already signaled it might send volunteer forces to support Armenia, the same tactic Iran used in Syria and Iraq. Iranian-backed militias crossing into Armenia to defend Christian allies from Turkish aggression. That would put Iranian forces in direct conflict with Turkish forces. A war between two regional powers, both armed with advanced weapons, both capable of striking each other's energy infrastructure. Turkey could hit Iranian oil facilities in Karg Island. Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz, shutting down 20% of global oil supplies. Energy prices would skyrocket. The global economy would crash. Analysts currently estimate a 75% probability of another Armenia-Azerbaijan war by 2026. Those are the same analysts who correctly predicted the 2020 war 6 months before it happened. Except this time, both sides have missiles that can reach each other's capitals. This time, Turkey and Iran might get involved. This time, the body count won't be in the thousands, it'll be in the tens of thousands. Close your eyes and imagine the smell of smoke and cordite hanging in the air. The sound of air raid sirens wailing across Yerevan and Baku. Entire city blocks going dark as power grids collapse. Hospitals overflowing with casualties, doctors operating by flashlight because electricity is gone. Refugees flooding into Georgia, Iran, and Russia, millions of displaced people with nowhere to go. This isn't hypothetical. It nearly happened in September 2022 when border clashes killed over 200 soldiers in just 2 days. Both sides were mobilizing reserves. Both sides were moving heavy armor toward the border. Both sides were minutes away from total war before international pressure, calls from Biden, Macron, and Putin, forced a ceasefire. One miscalculation. One hothead commander. One intercepted communication interpreted as a launch order. That's all it takes. So why did India risk all of this? Why sell a weapon that could trigger a regional catastrophe involving NATO, Russia, and Iran? Why insert themselves into a conflict that has nothing to do with Indian national interests? The answer will surprise you. Because this isn't really about Armenia versus Azerbaijan. It's about India countering China and Pakistan on a global chessboard. Look at a map. Armenia gives India a strategic foothold in the Caucasus, a region close to Central Asia, Iran, and the soft underbelly of Russia. It's a geopolitical position India has never had before. India has been trying for decades to expand influence beyond South Asia. China's Belt and Road Initiative encircles India with Chinese infrastructure projects in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. India needed a countermove. Armenia is that countermove. A friendly state in a region where India previously had zero presence. A state that borders Iran, India's energy partner. A state that connects to the international north-south transport corridor, a trade route India is developing to bypass Pakistan and reach Europe through Iran and the Caucasus. Every Brahmos sold is a $375 million advertisement to the world that India's defense industry produces world-class weapons. It proves that Indian technology works in real combat conditions, and that India is a reliable arms supplier when Russia isn't. India's arms exports have grown from $1.5 billion in 2014 to over $3 billion in 2024. India is now the world's 25th largest arms exporter. Still small compared to the United States, Russia, or China, but growing fast. Colonel Rajesh Kumar, a retired Indian Army officer and defense analyst, explained it this way: "We're not choosing sides in the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. Frankly, that's not our concern. What we're doing is showing the world that Indian weapons work, and that we're a credible alternative when Russia fails to deliver or when countries want to diversify their defense imports." India wants to become a top 10 arms exporter by 2030. The Armenia deal is proof of concept. If the Brahmos performs well, if it successfully deters Azerbaijani aggression, other countries will come calling. Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. All countries looking for advanced weapons without the political baggage of buying from the US, Russia, or China. And there's one more factor: China. China backs Pakistan, India's primary adversary. The two countries fought wars in 1947, 1965, 1971, and 1999. They currently have border disputes in Kashmir. Chinese troops killed 20 Indian soldiers in a border clash in 2020. India sees China as an existential threat. China also has growing influence in Central Asia through Belt and Road projects. China has quietly supported Azerbaijan through defense partnerships, selling drones, loitering munitions, and air defense systems. India arming Armenia is a direct countermove. It's a chess piece placed on the board to complicate Chinese strategy. If China-backed Azerbaijan faces missiles from India-backed Armenia, China's influence in the region gets checked. For Armenia, the Brahmos means survival. It means never again being defenseless while drones pick off their soldiers. It means the ability to hit back if attacked. For India, it means credibility, arms sales, strategic depth, and a foothold near China's sphere of influence. And for the region? Some analysts argue it actually means deterrence. Mutually assured destruction. If both Armenia and Azerbaijan can hit each other's cities in minutes, neither side will risk total war. It's the same logic that kept the United States and Soviet Union from destroying each other during the Cold War. Fear prevents conflict. The knowledge that retaliation is guaranteed stops leaders from pulling the trigger. Dr. Samuel Charap, a Russia expert at Rand Corporation, wrote in 2024, "Paradoxically, Armenia's acquisition of advanced strike systems may stabilize the region by raising the costs of aggression to unacceptable levels for Azerbaijan. Maybe, just maybe, these missiles prevent war instead of causing it. Maybe the nightmare scenario never happens because both sides know it would be mutual suicide. But there's one final twist that changes everything. Russia can't actually stop the sale. Because they co-developed the Brahmos. They signed agreements in the 1990s giving India the right to manufacture and export it. If Russia tried to block the Armenia deal, they'd have to publicly admit their technology is now working against their own geopolitical interests. That's a humiliation the Kremlin absolutely cannot afford. Russian state media has been largely silent on the Brahmos sale. No official condemnation. No sanctions threats. Just awkward silence. Behind closed doors, Russian officials are furious. But publicly? They can't say anything without admitting they've lost control of their own technology. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan is quietly shopping for countermeasures. They're negotiating with Israel for Iron Dome air defense systems, the same technology Israel uses to intercept Hamas rockets. They're talking to Turkey about co-producing indigenous missile defense systems. They're reaching out to South Korea for KM-SAM surface-to-air missiles. The arms race is accelerating. Every move by Armenia triggers a counter-move by Azerbaijan. Every weapon Armenia buys, Azerbaijan buys 3 more. And Iran? Tehran has reportedly offered Armenia its own missile systems. 110 tactical ballistic missiles with a 300-kilometer range. Shorter range than Brahmos, but still deadly. Iran wants Armenia dependent on Iranian weapons, not just Indian ones. More dependence means more Iranian influence. Global arms sales to the South Caucasus are expected to increase by 300% by 2027. Everyone's militarizing. Everyone's preparing for the next war. The question isn't if there will be another war, it's when. Remember Armin, the Armenian soldier from 2020 who survived the drones? He said this in a recent interview with Armenian media. I lost friends in 2020 because we couldn't defend ourselves. We had the courage, but not the weapons. We fought with AK-47s against robots in the sky. But we have a fighting chance. We can hit back. That's all any soldier can ask for, a fighting chance. For Armin and thousands of Armenian soldiers like him, the Brahmos represents hope. The hope that 2020 never happens again. The hope that their country won't be carved apart while the world watches. But for Azerbaijan, the Brahmos represents an existential threat. A gun pointed at their head. A reason to strike first before Armenia decides to use those missiles. If you're wondering whether the Brahmos makes war more likely or less likely, here's the uncomfortable truth. Experts are split 50-50. Half say deterrence prevents conflict. Half say first strike capability creates a use it or lose it mentality that guarantees escalation. Arms control experts call this the security dilemma. One country arms itself for defense. The other country sees that as a threat and arms itself even more. Both countries end up less secure than before. It's a spiral that's incredibly difficult to stop once it starts. That's what makes this so dangerous. Nobody knows which way this goes. We're watching in real time as 2 countries armed with advanced weapons system edge closer to a war that could kill tens of thousands and destabilize an entire region. So here's the real question, and I want you to think about this carefully. Does giving Armenia first strike capability prevent war through deterrence? Or does it guarantee war by creating a scenario where Armenia might feel pressured to launch first before Azerbaijan develops countermeasures? If you were Armenia's prime minister, would you have bought the Brahmos knowing it could trigger a regional war involving Turkey and Iran? Or would you have stayed defenseless and just hoped Azerbaijan wouldn't attack again? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you think Turkey or Iran will actually get involved in the next war, tell us why. I'm genuinely curious what you think happens next because experts can't agree and this situation is evolving every single day. If you want to understand how modern warfare actually works, not Hollywood nonsense with explosions and heroes, but real military strategy, real geopolitics, real consequences, hit that subscribe button. We break down defense news that nobody else will touch. The stories that actually matter. The wars that could reshape the world. Because next week, we're covering why Pakistan is absolutely panicking about this Brahmos deal, and it has nothing to do with Armenia. It has everything to do with India's eastern neighbor and a naval blockade scenario that keeps Pakistani military planners awake at night. See you then.